Hi out there, this is Cynthia Howard, and welcome to today's update on Freedomcast, which is Saturday, November 10th, 2018, the day before the real Veterans Day, which is November 11th, even though everybody celebrates it on Monday, November 12th. The real day is tomorrow, and thank you, veterans out there, for your sacrifices made to keep this country safe, secure, and great. And I just want to update you on my show from Thursday, which was called Who's to Bless and to Blame on the Election Results. And since that show on Thursday, we have had a major problem in Florida. Who would have guessed, in Florida of all places, where we had the hanging Chad problem, which I had mentioned on the show. I never believed it would happen again, but even though it's not hanging Chads, it's discrepancy in the elections. With 16,000 missing votes that have been cast and have been picked up by a truck and moved off-site, and now the Secretary of State has ordered a recount by machines, and we don't know how accurate the machine will be because they're programmed in some of the black boxes, and the election will only come out as good as the program or how accurate as the program, and we don't know who program those machines, so there may be still voter fraud, so they may end up with a hand count, and possibly in the Senate election they will anyways, because it was even closer between Bill Nelson and Rick Scott, and that remains to be seen. But there's a lot going on in Florida, and it's scary when our elections aren't pure, and it's being run by one individual in Broward County who has a corruptive past with allowing illegal voting and allowing deceased voters, which obviously don't exist, to vote. And she has been the center of controversy in many, many different instances with corrupt machines, with allowing people to vote that shouldn't be voting. And she's still down there conducting this recount. And also on the ballot looks funny because the names of Bill Nelson, who's running for Secretary of State, and along with Rick Scott, instead of appearing in the other columns where they did in the other areas of Florida, they appeared underneath the ballot direction. So it was a strange spot to even put the candidates. But nevertheless, they were put there, and maybe they were put there for a reason. We will find out as the days progress. And I do hope that comes out in favor of Governor Scott, because we really need him in the U.S. Senate. Let's all cross our fingers and keep an eye on that. And I hope they have people watching down there, such as sheriffs or law enforcement or somebody that is pure and transparent to make this come out the way it should. Now, as far as my radio show on Thursday, I talked a lot about what I thought was the impacting results of the election. What was the major forces at play? And the more I think about it, probably the immigration issue, where we don't have a wall that has been completed, that Congress failed to vote on. Congress has failed to vote on repeal and replacing Obamacare, and those issues are probably the major issues that are in the voters' mind, and that's why they probably voted Democratic, because they weren't happy with some of the Republicans not giving President Trump the hand that he needs down there. So they said, we'll put some other people, and maybe they will help as well. And if they're conservative or they're moderate Democrats, they may. And if they're liberal Democrats, it probably will be contrary as well. We'll have to wait and see how they work with our president. But I think that was on the voters' mind about immigration and about health care. Those, sometimes it's the economy, but if it's not in the states where they felt the impact of the Trump economy, then they probably voted contrary as well, like we did in New Hampshire. I also think censorship by conservatives. The more conservatives out there that get their voices heard, the better chance you have of having a transparent election where more Republicans get elected. But in latter years and currently now on social media, a lot of the platforms are censoring pretty prominent conservative voices. And probably I'm being censored right now and not know it. but it could be done right under your face and you wouldn't even realize that it was being done. So by having that tool that these social media platforms have, then the other side gets heard more than we do. In addition, the black box voting, where the programmers have the control of the black box, the optical scanners, so that even though you think your vote was counted, the vote was counted, but contrary to the way you wanted it counted, because it could be programmed to do so. And we will have to bring that up on another show, a complete topic on black box voting and how fraudulent and devious it really can be, especially in a close election. Also, which played an important part in the race on Tuesday, was the incumbent factor. No matter which party it was, usually the incumbent will hold the seat because of familiarity with that individual, or because that person sends you more information, or whatever the case. It always favors the incumbent, and if for the most part the incumbent is doing a good job, they remain in office. So that was one issue. And then not having the coattails of our president in 2018 as we had in 2016. He wasn't on the ballot, obviously, so voters were paying more closely attention to the local candidates in individual races rather than the presidential race. And also, I think local Republican candidates probably were more complacent. They weren't out there working the pavement as they were in 2016. Maybe they lacked resources, maybe they lacked manpower, but they didn't have the strong ground game that the Democrats have. And you've got to get out there, you've got to literally live, eat, and breathe your campaign. If you don't do that, the other side will take the advantage and they will do it, and they will win every time. So by just sitting back, or by just hemming and hawing and saying we don't have a chance this year because we've got strong Democrats that are out there with resources, they lost. There were some Republicans that won, and the Republicans that won were the ones that had a strong campaign, that didn't take anything for granted, that were right out there in front of the people, that were, door to door, literally door to door, and made that last call and had a strong campaign. And maybe they won by a very small margin, but nevertheless they won. And that's what you have to do. You have to be strong and get out there and do the work and lay the groundwork, and never ever take anything for granted. And the other thing is, like in New Hampshire and maybe in some other small rural states, we did not feel the impact. We were not the benefactors of the Trump economy. In other words, a lot of the jobs and the companies that came back came to the Midwest, or they came to the Southeast, to the larger part of the country, or where costs were lower, such as taxes, such as insurance, maintenance fees, and they didn't have to deal with the bad winter. And they had a well-trained workforce. And there was an article in the Union Leader which talked about how our workforce in New Hampshire and our population is not growing. Our population has been stagnant for the last 10 years, and it's only grown at 2%, which was very similar to the population growth about 100 years ago in the 1920s. We had the same situation, the same problem. People move to where the jobs are, to where the housing market is better, to where taxes are low, where their overall utility costs are less. And that would be going to maybe the western states, the southwestern states, the southeastern states, or wherever they need to be to keep their families secure. So we in New Hampshire, I believe, it resulted in a poor showing for Republicans, in that we were not the benefactors of the Trump economy. And it also stated in the article that most of the population is made up of elderly people, middle-aged people, disabled people, retirees who are working part-time, and that's not a drawing card for a company that is looking to relocate to New Hampshire when we have an advantage of overall lower taxes except for property taxes. So by seeing a small working pool to choose from with not very many young people, but mainly older folks, they tend to go in the larger areas, and the companies do too. And so by not being the benefactor of the Trump economy and having a low populace led us to defeat, I believe. And I know Governor Sununu is working on changing that, and as he works harder and as he gets more companies in here, I think you will see a difference in 2 years, and definitely see a difference because President Trump will be on the ballot, and that will make a huge, huge difference. And it will segue down to the local races. The state legislature will come back into Republican hands, and our local races will be won, and they will be Republican, and I believe by a larger majority than this time of the winners. So thank you for listening to my little update from my radio show on Thursday, and I'm glad you could listen to me, and I hope to be out here again broadcasting from my temporary studio in Claremont, New Hampshire. You can listen to all my podcasts, which is known as Freedomcast, on podbean.com, Spreaker.com, and SoundCloud.com. Also on my YouTube channel, which is Cynthia Howard, and Facebook, Cynthia Howard, Cindy Tea Time on Twitter.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn, and I have a professional network of 250,000 fellow women out there, and we share our ideas about home and family and education and the workforce. So I hope you will connect with me on these different platforms and listen again to my show. And if you need to contact me, you can contact me on my website, which is ccltgroup.webs.com. There's a place to contact me. There's a form. That's ccltgroup.webs.com. Or you can call me at 603 New Hampshire 543-1372. Or email me, cindycool09@yahoo. So those are the ways you can get in touch with me if you have any questions or ideas about my show. And if you would like to be a guest, and maybe we can set you up and schedule you and have you have a sit-down interview. And that would be great. So until next time, please join me again. This is Cynthia Howard signing off on Saturday, November 10th, 2018, wishing all of you that served our country a very happy, healthy Veterans Day tomorrow, November 11th, 2018, which is the real Veterans Day. Thank you so much for listening, and you can catch this broadcast on YouTube. Thank you.